You're listening to IRN, the Inception Radio Network, Chicago, Illinois.
The Extraordinary Phenomenon Investigations Council presents Epic Voyages. Come join us as we enter and experience the great mysteries of the world with tonight's host,
Laurel Tague.
Too much to learn, you say. Cover up the spine, that's your plan, not mine. I'm ready to be told. Secrets to unfold. It's our time to come of age. Time for truth to turn the page. Don't wanna be inside the dark. Live within a question mark. Are they a friend or foe? Tell me now. You need to know. Need to
Welcome, everybody. Welcome back to Epic Voyages online radio show here at Inception Radio Network. I am driving the bus tonight for Epic Voyages. I'm Laurel Tague, the Vice President and New York State Director for Epic Voyagers. And tonight we have a guest who I think is probably going to be very familiar to many of you, a familiar voice. He has his own show here at Inception Radio Network, John Cappello. John Cappello is, I don't know if you've heard the news, but he has been voted the number 6 best psychic in the United States and the number 11 best psychic in the entire world. That's results of the most recent 2014 competition. So, John, many loud applause, little clapping hands to you for that.
Oh, well, thank you very much.
I want to tell everybody what your website is. It's John Cappello, JohnCappello.com, and that is a good starting point, John. But you have another website that really shows your calendar. What is the name of that one?
Well, I have another one called Visionary Workshop, but JohnCappello.com does have a calendar on it. So
okay,
it's just the Visionary Workshop is mainly for my workshops that I conduct. So I have more than one website.
And you do a lot of those personal appearances and travel to other places. What's your upcoming schedule in the next few weeks? Say up to the middle of January look like?
Well, this weekend I'm back in Houston. I'll be at Centerpoint in Houston, and we'll be doing a couple of workshops, a gallery, and we'll have our Aura camera there, and we'll be at the Centerpoint Holistic Fair on Sunday. So I'm looking forward to that, and it's always nice to go to Houston. I'm so well received there. It's very nice. And then I'm going to take a short break, and about mid-January I'll be going up to Midwest City, Oklahoma. That's right outside Oklahoma City. And then we go to Shreveport, and I go to the ARE Houston at the end of the month. It'll be the first time I'll be at the ARE in the Association for Research and Enlightenment, the Houston chapter. I'll be appearing there the end of January. So that's my schedule through January. Then later in February, I'll start a longer trip at the end of that month, because going into March, I'll be going back to Shreveport, Louisiana, and then also to New Orleans. So it's already shaping up to be a pretty busy year for 2015. So hopefully, I'll be coming to a state near some of our listeners.
Yeah, I've been trying to find appropriate venues up here in southern New York and upstate New York for John, so that he can come up here. And I know we have bookstores and metaphysical centers and things like that. So any of you out there in the southern tier or upstate New York area, the Catskills, northeastern or northwestern Pennsylvania, if you have any ideas of places that John could come through for a day or two and do readings or appearances or even instruction. He has a lot of classes that he teaches. Why don't you drop John a line at his website, johncappello.com. That's got 2 P's and 2 L's in it. Or you could go to our Epic Voyagers website, Epic Voyagers, VOYAGERS.com, and go to contact and drop us a line, and that'll help us out if you could make some suggestions. Well, John, I want to just say a couple of things about you for people who may not have caught your show, and it's the first Tuesday of every month, right?
Yes.
Well, be sure and go ahead.
Yeah, it's on Tuesdays, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. On Tuesday.
Well, be sure and make a note of that if you haven't caught his show yet, because he's got some very interesting guests on there. And of course, as with all the other shows on Inception Radio Network, they're archived. So check that out in the archives section here at Inception Radio Network. John is a practicing professional psychic and medium and a visionary. He's also certified as an authentic psychic medium by the American Federation of Certified Psychics and Mediums. John has a book, which is an award-winning book. I think it was published about a year ago, Open the Mind, Exercise the Soul. And he's been working professionally in metaphysics since 1997. But you've been interested in psychic ability and things that are beyond, say, the 5 senses since you were a child. Is that right?
Oh, yes. My first love was astrology, and that's kind of what we're going to talk about tonight. But that was my first love, and so I've been doing that for many, many years. But the psychic stuff just was very natural for me.
Didn't you tell me recently that you're getting involved in, well, I mean, you've already been involved in it, but you're getting really more deeply involved with grief work with people who've lost relatives or loved ones?
Yes, as a medium, I deal so much with grief, and we work with spirit, we work with people on the other side. And they're okay. They're just fine. They tell me all the time, I'm doing well. I've conquered my illness. I'm safe. I'm happy, and so on and so forth. And the people I worry about are the ones that are here, and my clients. And so whenever you do a reading, you have to be very aware of your client and the stage of grief that they're in, and things that are going on in their life. And so it's very important to kind of understand the grief process, because being a medium, you have to help you're there to help people, and you're there to help them go to a higher stage of grief, so that they can they can overcome these different stages of grief and reach healing. And sometimes you can never completely heal from a loss, but you can cope with it better.
Yeah, it is very, very difficult. And it's unusual to me. I haven't had that many serious losses in my life, fortunately, but I've had enough to have what I would consider a few scars, and some of them just really seem to cut very deeply, whereas the other ones maybe are not so deep. So who knows, John? I may be calling you up in another year or so and talking to you about this. Well, you mentioned astrology, and I want to tell everyone that since I started working here with Epic Voyages Radio, trying to coordinate the guest hosts and set up the schedule, I have wanted much to introduce some expert in astrology to the listeners. I've actually been dabbling with astrology for probably about 40 years now, and it is so much more than anything you would even suspect from looking in the newspaper columns and reading 3 lines of newsprint about your sun sign. It's way more detailed than that. It's way more useful than that, and it's very interesting. And John and I got to talking a couple of weeks ago, and lo and behold, I didn't know about his background in astrology, and he agreed to share some of what he teaches in his astrology classes. And we thought, well, maybe just seeing how it goes tonight, this might make a really interesting series of shows talking about astrology. What really is there in astrology beyond just what you see in the newspaper, and there's so much there. So, John, are you ready for it?
Oh, absolutely. I love talking about astrology, and so it's a fun topic, and astrology is actually a lot of work. It's hard work, and I know you've dabbled in it 40 years, and I'm sure you're like me, always finding out something new.
Oh yeah,
and because it's rich, it's very rich in so many areas. It's rich with mysticism. It's rich with folklore, and the ancients, they needed a way to explain the way things worked, and they needed a way to know when to plant their crops. They needed a way to know when to harvest. They needed to know when the first of the year was. And so what they did was they just started looking around them, and they noticed that when the stars came out at night, that they had certain positions during different times of the year. And they knew that when these different positions occurred, that it was time for something to happen. And so, for instance, the first of the year we always think of as January the 1st. But with astrology, the first of the year is March 21st. And it makes sense because that's the first day of spring. That's when the spring equinox is there, and so astrology, once you start to understand it and you start to think like an astrologer, so many things make sense when it comes to the universe, and because everything kind of works together and everything kind of builds upon each other, and that's the way the signs do. The signs work together. They're a reaction of to the previous sign, and there's so much growth and so much understanding that can be gained about the human experience by studying astrology. Whether you believe in it or not, the insight that's provided by the different aspects of astrology can be very, very helpful, and it can give a lot of sense to the nature and order of things. So I'm really pleased that you're interested in that, and if you like, I'll be happy to kind of go over a lot of the details of my introduction to astrology for the listeners, so that they can kind of understand how that layering works. And of course, this is just the beginning, and astrology gets complicated fast, and you can get lost in it if you don't know these basics, or the basics on how the different information is layered upon each other. And so the way I try to explain it to my students is that astrology is there's kind of building blocks to astrology, and you start first with the elements. And before I go any further, though, I do want to mention that there's a lot of confusion about the different astrological systems. Every ancient culture had their own astrology. Even the Mayans had astrology, and the Chinese, of course, have astrology, and the Westerners like us and the Easterners, like people in India, they have what they call Vedic astrology. Now, Vedic astrology and Western astrology started out about the same time, and they started out with the same calculations. And the thing that happened is that it was called the precession of the equinoxes. The Western astrologers started to calculate the movement of the planets based on basically where the equator is. Okay, and so those positions of the planets are different than what the actual placements are from where we sit in at our homes. But with Vedic astrology works with the actual placement of the planets based on astronomy, and astrology, of course, is the father of astronomy. But what happens is that the two systems spread apart by 1 degree every 70 years. And since the two systems have started, they have now separated by 23 degrees. So if you are born, let's say 0 degrees Aries, then you have to go back 23 degrees, and so you would really be a 7-degree Pisces. Each sign is 30 degrees, because if you look at astrology, you have a chart wheel, you have a circle, and that's 360 degrees, and divide that by 12 is 30. So each sign is 30 degrees, and so after so many years, Vedic astrology will be one full sign behind Western astrology. Both systems still work, though, and I'm not an expert in Vedic astrology. I know enough about Vedic astrology to be dangerous, but I'm more of a student of Western astrology. Now, the ancients, when they were looking at the stars, they could only see with the naked eye so far as Saturn. And it's kind of unbelievable nowadays when you think of being able to see Saturn. But they were able to recognize characteristics of that planet by being here on Earth. And so they projected out aspects of astrology all the way to the planet of Saturn. But Western astrologers have now included planets like Uranus, Neptune, and we still love Pluto now.
Yes,
and
yes.
some astrologers still they go further and use the asteroid belt and so on, and they use other aspects. They use Chiron, and they use comets, different things like that to explain astrology. But tonight we're going to simplify it as much as we possibly can. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of help you construct a chart and get an idea of exactly how it works. And so if you can imagine a pie, like a round pie, and if you can imagine the area that would be, or a clock, the area on the clock, which would be 9 o'clock, that's the starting place of a chart. And we call that the area where your rising sign is. And the thing about it is that with astrology starts at the very beginning of time, when the earth was created. And the earth was created from fire and molten lava. And so that is one of the cornerstones of astrology. And fire and the molten lava, as it cooled down, that's when we had the formulation of the earth. And so it's important to remember that the first element is fire, the second element is earth, and then as the earth cooled, gases arose from the earth, and so you had air that was created. And then from that, you had the air become water, or parts of the air became water. And so you have 4 elements on the earth. You have the fire, you have the earth, you have the air, and you have water. And so those things are very basic to the the creation of a birth chart or the understanding of astrology. Now, I also, and like I say, that circle or that clock for astrology is called a chart wheel. And the thing about astrology is that it has its own language and it has its own definitions. And that language and those definitions need to be understood before you start to really seriously look at astrology. And the reason why is because, once again, you can get lost very quickly if you don't understand the terminology, like a chart wheel. And if you don't know what a rising sign is or an ascendant, both of those are the same thing. If you don't know what the descendant sign is, if you don't know what a glyph is, a glyph, for instance, is the alphabet of the glyphs are the alphabet of astrology, and you have a glyph for each of the signs of the zodiac, and you have a glyph for each of the planets. And so it's important, if you're an astrologer, to know those glyphs just as you would know your ABCs. And so these are some very, very fundamental things that one must understand when you are working with astrology. Now, of course, when you're talking about creating a chart from someone, you need the day, the date. You need to know the time and the place of a client. So the date, time, and place is really what you need. You need, for instance, what today is December 8th, and if you had the exact time that you were born, and then the place, that will give you the exact positions of the planets in your chart. Now, what do the planets do in your chart? Well, the planets give you the tools, the placement of the planets in your chart, how it affects you in your birth chart, how the tools you have to deal with the issues in life. That's basically what it is, and so it's very, very fascinating how that works. And if there are questions, and if I'm going too fast, please let me please ask me, and I'll be happy to try to answer them in the chat room. Because do you have a question?
No, I tell you what I would like to say, though, is anyone who can get to a smartphone or an Android tablet, iPad, something like that, or a PC, and come to our chat at InceptionRadioNetwork.com. We are putting up some visuals there in the chat room, pictures of things to try and describe some of the things that John is talking about. And it's kind of handy. It's nothing that you couldn't find online if you did a search, but if you're not really familiar with astrology, it'd be kind of hard to figure out what to put in the search engine to find these things. So please think about if you can get to it, or later if you want to go back in the chat room and scroll through it, and you can find some of these images that we're posting there. But let me just go ahead and remind everybody that we're listening to John Cappello on Epic Voyages Radio here at Inception Radio Network. So go on and get back to your story there, John. It's a good one.
Okay. Well, as I was saying, that you have 4 elements, and of course you have 12 signs of the zodiac. So after you have gone through the first 4 signs, you have your first sign is a fire sign. Then you go to earth. Then you go to air. Then you go to water, and you start all over again. And you do that, of course, 3 times. And so as you're setting up your astrological chart, it's important to know that there are 3 fire signs. There are 3 earth signs, 3 air signs, and 3 water signs. And that becomes more and more significant as time goes on. But then you look at other aspects of human nature, and you have to say that when there are people who are doers in life, And the people that are doers, they're the ones that start things. They're the ones that get things going. And in astrology, we call those people, we say that they are in cardinal signs. Okay, those signs are the ones that they're all about action, and so therefore the first sign of the zodiac is a cardinal sign, and then you have people that just don't want to change. You have people that are fixed. You have people that, I mean, you can't move them. They're stubborn. They're people that it has to be their idea before they're willing to make any kind of change in life. And so that's the second type, personality type, that is part of the zodiac. And the third personality type is obviously the mutable people, the people that try to get along, the negotiators. And if you want to, you can already start to see that the first sign of the zodiac is fire and cardinal, and that relates to the sign of Aries. And the second sign is Taurus, and that is earth, and it's fixed. The third sign is Gemini, and that sign is air, and it is mutable. And it's interesting too, because if you want to go even further, we'll just take the first three signs. The sign of Aries, the doer, the action person, the person full of fire, is also ruled by the planet Mars. And if you know about Mars in ancient Greece and ancient Rome, you know that Mars is the god of war. And so naturally, Aries is going to have some of those characteristics: a fiery temper, a person that is maybe impulsive, a person that is youthful and fresh, because it's the first sign or the infant of the zodiac. And then you come to Taurus, and Taurus is an earth sign, a fixed sign, and that sign is ruled by Venus. And what is Venus? Venus is love and beauty. Venus appreciates things, and so the person that's Taurus is someone who appreciates this. This is mine. This is my possessions. These are people that know about jewelry. They know about how to buy things, and they know the value of things. And you're not going to take it away from them. so that's that Taurus type of energy. And then you look at Gemini, and you say Gemini is ruled by Mercury. Mercury is the one with the winged feet, and that is the swift one. Gemini is also the sign of the twins. And why is that? And the reason why is because Mercury was the only god, or Hermes even, when in the Greek version of Mercury, was the only god that could go to Hades and go to the Elysian fields. He was the only one, and neither people in the Elysian fields didn't like him because he went to Hades, and people in Hades didn't like him because he would go into the Elysian fields. So everybody was jealous of Hermes and Mercury, and so with Gemini has that opportunity for duality. And so that's an interesting aspect of these personalities. But then you have a little anomaly. The anomaly is the next sign is water. Well, water is the fourth element, but what modality does it belong to? It belongs to the cardinal modality. Water. And the action aspect of the water signs is Cancer. And what does that mean? That means that emotionally, they're the people that get things going emotionally. And it's not surprising that Cancer is the sign of home, family, mother. It's also the sign for patriotism. It's the sign for being nurtured, the nurturing sign. So if you can already see that just with these first four signs of the zodiac, that there is something going on here. There's a system. There's something that's that's just fascinating about it. At least from my perspective, and so, as you go through the different signs, you go to the next sign, and the next sign is a fire sign, because we start the elements all over again. And so if we start the elements all over again, and we already know that the cardinal sign is Cancer, the next one up is fixed. So you have a fixed fire sign instead of a cardinal fire sign like Aries. You have a fixed fire sign, and that's called Leo, and so the Leos, they're the royalty. They're the ones they're the kingly ones. They're the ones that have that gracefulness about them. And most American presidents have strong Leos in their chart. President Clinton was a Leo, and I believe President Obama is a Leo as well.
Yeah,
Cancer,
he is.
Cancer and Cancer, either Cancer rising or Leo sun is most of the presidents. Now I know Ronald Reagan and Abraham Lincoln were both Aquarians, but what's Aquarius? Aquarius is opposite of Leo. So they just have a different way of using these different energies, those opposites. So, but there's a lot of leadership qualities towards the Leo. And why is that? And they are fixed. You're not going to change them. So many people talk about how President Obama is very stubborn, and he just won't change, and he won't get things done. But in a way, you want a leader to be that way. You want a leader that is not going to give up his principles, so it's hard to lead if you have someone who's just too wishy-washy. So this is just astrologically speaking. And then, of course, let me
throw in, too, here that Leos are also the performers in the zodiac. They're the ones that like to be on center stage, like to be the center of attention.
Right.
And they thrive on that. But they're also a sign that adores and loves to play with children.
They are. I'll get to some other traits of the signs in just a moment. But Leo is the sign for children. It's the sign of father. And it is the sign for creativity. And it's a sign for risk-taking, gambling. It's the sign for relationships like boyfriend-girlfriend relationships. It's a sign for recreational sex, even. So it's a fascinating sign, and it's a sign that we can learn a lot from. It's not the strongest sign of the zodiac, even though you might think it is because of all of the attributes we've just talked about. But moving on, the next sign of the zodiac is the element of Earth. And the Earth sign, Virgo, is the sixth sign of the zodiac. And this is a unique situation with Virgo, because with Virgo, it is ruled by the planet Mercury, just like Gemini. But it's a different aspect of the mercurial personality. Whereas the Gemini is the communicator, where Gemini is the one that is talking to the people in Hades and in Elysian fields and dabbling here and dabbling there and saying what they have to in order to get their way. The Virgo is the type of person who's the analyst, is the detail person, is the person that is very critical, the person with that keen eye to discover those minute flaws or those things that need to be corrected that may not be easily seen. But Virgo is also the sign of health. It's the sign of everyday routine, daily routine. It's the sign of pets, small pets, not large pets, small pets, and it's a fascinating sign. It's a sign of need. People taking care of their daily needs, and if you can imagine these six signs that we've just discussed, all of them are what you would say are in the southern hemisphere of a chart wheel. And what's fascinating about it is that it's kind of a walk through life, because if you walk through life and you notice that Aries is the infant of the zodiac, and they're the ones that kind of present themselves, and they say, "I'm here. I am. It's me, 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 me." And so Taurus is a little bit of a reaction to that, because of just being there. The next thing that in our growth is that we want something. So Taurus wants something, and so you have I am, I want, and then what happens is the Gemini comes along, and they communicate. And the thing about it is, Gemini is interesting because if I always ask people this, and they give me different answers, but who's the first person that you have the opportunity to interact with when you come in this earth? Do you know that, Laurel?
Well, I would think that it's either a doctor, a nurse, or your mother.
No.
Am I wrong?
Your twin, your sibling. So if you are and if you think about it, that's what Gemini is. It's the sign of the twin. And so the first person you have to negotiate that space, that small womb with, is your brother or your sister.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the first contact you have with another human being, is potentially your twin. And the next person is Cancer. The next person is associated with mom. And what does mom do? Mom teaches you how to take care of yourself. She nurtures you. She gets you to the point to where you can put your clothes on. You know how to feed yourself. You know how to wash yourself. You know how to do certain basic things. And mom has been there to protect you, and been there to teach you your manners, and so on and so forth. And then the next person you meet is dad. And dad's the fifth sign of the zodiac. And so what happens with dad is dad teaches you a trade. Dad teaches you and makes you an apprentice. Dad gives you tools so that you can become independent. And then what happens, you go to the sign of Virgo. And that's when you have to learn to take care of yourself as a singular person. As a person that, hey, you go out and get a job. Virgo goes out and gets a job and does the daily routine, and has to, like I say, learn to take care of themselves medically, and as far as their hygiene and things of that nature. All of that is about Virgo. And you might even take on a dog or a cat to be your companion at that particular time. All of that is the private part of your life. And so whenever we have a transit, or you have some other aspects going on, and astrologically, if it's on the southern part of your chart, that all has to do with your private life, or your personal life. And it's important because the next sign is a major change in the zodiac for you and all of us, because the next sign, the seventh house, is the house of partners. And that particular sign has to be an air sign. And why? It has to have to be an air sign because the previous sign was Earth. And so we know that it's air. We also know that it's cardinal. Okay, and we know that that's a time when you're not going to find a mate by sitting around doing nothing, and you're not going to find a mate just by talking about it. You're going to find a mate by getting out there and meeting people, and that's what the cardinal sign of Libra does. Now, Libra is an interesting sign as well, because Libra is ruled by the planet Venus. Venus does double duty as well as the sign of Mercury. Gemini and Virgo are Mercury, but Venus rules Taurus and rules Libra, but there's a different aspect to the energy of Venus when it comes to Libra. When you're dealing with Venus, the aspects of Venus with the sign of Taurus, you're looking at diamonds and jewels, and you're looking at possessions that are beautiful and things that people will appreciate, those things that are of value. When you're looking at Venus with the sign of Libra, you're looking at physical beauty. You're looking at people that are physically very, very attractive, sexually attractive. And what do you want in a partner? You want a partner who is going to be attractive to you, sexually attractive to you. And that's why Libra women are considered the most beautiful in the zodiac. But the sign of Libra is not just about the other or the partner. It's also about open enemies. It's about people that potentially don't like you. It's the first part of your chart that is public. It's is when you kind of go above the horizon and you make a statement to the world that this is my partner. This is who I want to be my partner. And so we are going to join forces to go the rest of the way through the zodiac. And the next sign is very interesting because the next sign is a water sign. And why is that? Because we know the previous sign was air. And we also know that because the previous sign of Libra was cardinal, we know that the next sign is going to be fixed. And so this is a fixed water sign. So now we know that we have a fixed water sign. We know we have a fixed fire sign. We know we have a fixed earth sign. There's going to be one more fixed sign because we know that there's going to be four. There's going to be four fixed signs of the zodiac. Okay. And so the fixed sign of after the sign of Libra is Scorpio. And Scorpio is a tremendous sign. It's the second most powerful sign of the entire zodiac. And it's a sign of great depth. Actually, the occult is ruled by the sign of Scorpio. Scorpio is ruled by the planet Pluto, which is the planet of transformation. And that is the reason why it's transformation is because this is also the sign of death, taxes, estates, all things dealing with the dead, salvage, all of those things. But in our particular case, when we're talking about that young couple that just got married, it's the young couple that goes out, and what do they do when they get married? They go and buy furniture. And they go and buy a house, and they go ahead and get joint possessions, don't they? So that's what the eighth sign is about. All of those things plus joint possessions. It's also about hidden enemies. Anything hidden is Scorpio, because Scorpio, the nature of Scorpio is to be smiling at you, but they got another agenda sometimes.
Secretive.
They're very, very, very secretive people, and very passionate, very eccentric in the sense that they are. If they have an agenda, they're never deterred. They're never deterred because they're fixed. They're fixed, and because they're water, they go deep. They go very, very deep. Extremely psychic sign. They're a sign that would deal with the dead. And that makes it very interesting. And so it's a very serious sign, and it's very different, of course, when you talk about when you put it in relation to Libra, because Libra is about that joy of the spouse and joy of the joining of two people together. Things get really serious when it gets to Scorpio, and so it's a great sign to be able to talk about and to understand. And Pluto, for instance, the ruler of Pluto is about drugs. It's about violence. It's about, like I said, transformation. Pluto rules atomic weapons and the atomic age. When Pluto was discovered, that's when we were discovering how to use atomic power, and so that's an attribute that this particular sign has. Now, as I was telling you, from the very beginning, the Vedic astrologers and the first Western astrologers, they all agreed on all the planets. And so at the time, the ruler of Scorpio was Mars, was the warrior. You see, and so you'll often hear people say the old ruler of Scorpio was Mars. The new ruler is Pluto, and that's kind of hard to believe because Pluto, I'm sure, is billions of years old. And but we call it the new ruler, and so it's kind of fascinating. But then you move on. You move on to the ninth sign of the zodiac, and so what do you know about the ninth sign? You already know that it's fire. You know that it's a fire sign. You know that it's a mutable sign, and you know that because Scorpio was a fixed sign, and the modality of the next sign is going to be a mutable sign, and so you know that the sign of Sagittarius is going to be one which is fire and mutable. And you're also going to know that this particular sign is ruled by the planet Jupiter. Now, the characteristics of Sagittarius are basically a reaction to Scorpio. And Sagittarius says, hey, Scorpio, you need to lighten up. You know, you're very, very intense. You're very, very passionate. You're very, very much about control and very much about secrets and things like that. Sagittarius.
Take a chill pill, right?
Yeah, take a chill pill. So Sagittarius is the sign of spirituality. It's the sign of luck. It's the sign of expansion. It's the sign of philosophy. It's also the sign of long trips and foreigners. Now, you might notice that each of these signs, when they get above the horizon, they are opposed one of the signs that is in the southern hemisphere of your chart. For instance, the opposition sign to Libra is Aries. And if you look at it, where Aries says I am, and Libra would say we are, you know. And then you go to Scorpio versus Taurus, and Taurus says these are my things, whereas Scorpio would say these are our things. You see how it works? You see how that there's a symmetry that's being developed? It's amazing, I think.
Below the horizon, it's internalized. It's closest to me, and then above the horizon, it's me reaching outwards beyond my most central home or myself.
Right. That's right. It's about the public. It's a public meeting the public and getting out there and having to deal with negotiating with other people, with other beings. And so with Sagittarius, you also have that the sign of long trips, whereas Gemini is about short trips. Whereas you have elementary school education for Gemini, you have higher education for Sagittarius. Whereas you have the double talk basically by the Gemini, and I'm not saying Geminis lie or anything like that, but Sagittarius is the truth teller, whereas Gemini is about the duality or the twins. The Sagittarius is about the bachelor or the priest. You see. And
I didn't know that.
So that's so when you see the Sagittarius person, and maybe you're looking at their charts, you're knowing that that's the part where they that's their philosophy. And as a couple, it's you develop a household philosophy. You have a philosophy of your home, and so that is that's all about the sign of Sagittarius. And then you move on. You move on to the next sign. And so what do we know about the next sign? You know the next sign is going to be an earth sign. You know that it's going to be a cardinal sign. So you know that this is going to be a pretty strong sign. This sign is going to be one that is going to be very difficult to change because of the earth and the stability that earth all means. You know that they're not going to be afraid to take action because they are cardinal signs. sign. Now, this sign is, of course, Capricorn, which is the strongest sign of the zodiac. They're the power brokers. They're the Bill Gates types, the Donald Trumps, the tycoons. They're the megalomaniacs, if you want to say that. And they're the ones that like to throw can throw their weight around. Now, I'm not saying all Capricorns are that way. I'm not saying that at all. But those are where some of the energies are. And being the most powerful sign of the zodiac, they have a lot of tools at their disposal. Now, it's also a feminine sign, and I didn't go over the masculine, feminine signs, but in keeping with that idea, you can imagine the first sign of the zodiac is male. Then you go to Taurus, female, male, Gemini, female, Cancer, male, Leo, female, Virgo. You go back to Libra, which is male. Then you go Scorpio, female. You go to Sagittarius, male. So naturally, Capricorn is a feminine sign. You see, so it's also opposed. It's opposed to Cancer. And what's Cancer? Cancer's home. It's nurturing. It's being able to, protecting the home, whereas Capricorn is about the public. Being in the public. So Capricorn is about public image. That's what it's all about. It's about image. It's about I hate to say domination, but it can be about domination. It's about super control of things. Capricorn is ruled by my favorite planet, Saturn. Saturn is the great disciplinarian of the zodiac, and it's a hardcore planet. It's a planet that is very, very strong. It's wherever Saturn is in your chart, that may be the area where you have loss or you have great difficulties. So, or you may feel burdened in that particular area. It's also an area where things can happen later in life. It might be an area where you're absolutely the very, very best because you have to be. You had to make adjustments to make yourself the very best in that particular area. And so that's what Capricorns are about. They're about perfection. They're about being the best. They're about putting your best foot forward. They're about having the best image that you can have. And so they are the executive, the sign of the executive, the mountain goat, so to speak. And so it's a very fascinating sign. And so the next sign is going to be a reaction to that. The next sign is a sign that says, hey, Capricorn, don't you think you need to take a vacation?
Lighten up.
All work and no play. So that is that's when we go to the next sign. And what do we know about the next sign? So if Capricorn's an earth sign, we know that the next sign is air. We also know that it's fixed. We also know that it's the sign of Aquarius. It's the sign of hopes and wishes, because it's the sign of friends and groups. And so as you move through the zodiac and you move with your spouse, then you have your philosophy, you have your public image, because everybody goes, oh, we know about that couple. We know about them. And so now that couple, what do? They have their friends and they have their groups that they hang around with. And so they have their hopes and wishes and what they want to accomplish, because they are accomplished now, and so now they don't have to just be just the two of them. They can expand their world to friends and to groups and people like that. But the thing about this particular sign, by the way, the air signs are the intellectual signs. They are the signs of Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius. But the thing about the Aquarian is that Aquarius is ruled by Uranus, which is the higher octave of the planet Mercury, because Mercury is the mind, as we all have said, and so Uranus is the sign of the genius, but it's also the sign of the insane. Okay,
There's a very fine line sometimes between those two things.
Either you're insane or you are a genius, and so guess what sign I am? I'm insane, but I'm a 0 degree Aquarian, which is kind of a unique situation. But I'll explain that and just what that means in just a moment, if you want me to. But
sure.
It's Uranus is that sign of suddenness, of unpredictability. It's the sign of inventions, and so all this technology that we're now living with is all kind of Uranian or Aquarian, and so it's a very, very fascinating place or fascinating time to live in as our species goes to the next level. So Aquarians are doing that. And so then you wind up at the end of the zodiac, and at the end of the chart wheel, the end of the zodiac, we know that particular sign is water. And we also know that particular sign is mutable. And as you have traveled through the zodiac, you I can't say you're tired, but there's a certain degree of weariness there, and that's the Piscean. But the Piscean is a very, very magical sign in the sense that it takes all of the energy of all of the other signs and basically is the overseer, is the one that has the wisdom of Pisces. Pisces is ruled by Neptune, which is the planet of illusion, and it's the planet of imagination. And so a higher octave, in my view, of intelligence is imagination. And so the Piscean mind is that imaginative mind, that mind that does well with things of illusion like makeup or movies, things that are underwater, things that can't be seen just clearly. But the thing about Pisces has some wonderful aspects to it, but it's also the sign of addiction. It's the sign of incarceration. It's the sign of mental illness. And so it's a sign of karma. And so a lot of Pisces doesn't get the credit that it should get, from my view, because of the wonderful aspects that it does have, which are being very psychic, being very good with money, being very good with managing things, managing complex things, because they're in another octave. Like I say, they're in another league than the rest of the signs. And those people that are Pisces, if they use the energy correctly, then they can go very, very far. There's a lot of really rich people who are Pisces, and so that's a journey through the zodiac. And for me, it answers so many questions, and it helps understand so many different things about life that I always like to talk about the zodiac, and I can talk about it extemporaneously for a long time because there's so many things in there that can be said.
I'm gonna interrupt you right now because we're getting ready to come up on a hard break.
Okay.
And we're going to come back for a whole nother hour of this. Everybody stick around. You're listening to...
You're locked into Inception Radio Network, Superior, Wisconsin. Don't have a computer? Is your internet connection down? Don't worry. Use your trusty cell phone or landline and call into our listen line at 401-283-6700 to listen to the Inception Radio Network 24/7. Again, that call-in number is 401-283-6700. For the Inception Radio Network, I am MJ.
Are you a fan of Inception Radio Network? Do you reckon it's the best alternative talk radio station on the planet? Well, if you do, head to facebook.com/Inception Radio Network and like the page. Tell your friends, spread the word, and keep listening to the best.
Hello, IRN listeners. This is MJ saying hello and sharing an awesome secret I discovered. It's called DreamNuage.com. Fresh, raw, organic ingredients are used to create all their products. They are made in very small batches to ensure quality and freshness. Handmade in the USA, each product is created with care and with the finest organic ingredients. There are no preservatives, dyes, or chemicals in any product. Stop by Dream Nuage and relax. That's DREAMNUAGE.com. Simple, raw, organic.
Hello, I'm Pat Usford, inviting you to tune in to Epic Voyages every Monday evening at 8 p.m. Central, 9 p.m. Eastern, right here on Inception Radio Network. To find out more about Epic and how you can become a member, visit epicvoyagers.com.
EPIC is Extraordinary Phenomena Investigations Council, the forum for scholars, experts, and those fascinated by and involved in the study of ancient civilizations, conspiracies, cryptozoology, ETs, and UFOs, fringe science, the paranormal, and all manner of extraordinary phenomena. Please join EPIC as we examine the mysteries of the world and beyond on epicvoyagers.com. And for updates on the upcoming interactive video presentations, the latest news and discussion on the EPIC forum, as well as research, investigations, and membership opportunities. Epic Voyages program schedule is on the Inception Radio Network. Thank you for joining us.
Howdy, this is Joe Mars. I'm inviting you to tune in to Epic Voyages, 8 p.m. Central, 9 p.m. Eastern, Monday nights, right here on Inception Radio Network. To find out more about Epic and how you can become a member, visit epicvoyagers.com. That's epicvoyagers.com.
Hello, everyone. Lorian Fenton here, host of the California MUFON radio show, asking if you'd like special access to exclusive and amazing information about UFOs, the paranormal, and all things unexplained. If you're nodding yes, then join IRN's Insider Club. As an Insider Club member, you'll get an all-access pass to premier Inception Radio Network content for only $4.99 a month. This includes live UFO and paranormal conferences, live streaming UFO skywatches, exclusive IRN radio and TV productions, and of course, paying radio with MJ and Ken Storch. So don't wait any longer. Visit InceptionRadioNetwork.com and click on Member Login to join IRN's Insider Club and get your VIP access today.
Well, welcome back, everybody. You're listening to Epic Voyages Radio tonight, and we're just having for me at least, I'm just having a ball listening to John Cappello, our guest, discuss sort of the primer of astrology. It's way more than just the little 3 or 4 lines you see in the newspapers every day that say, Leo, you're going to have a great day, but don't eat anything with onions in it. I mean, there's a lot more to it than that. And we had an interesting conversation offline here during the break. This is such a huge subject. You really can't say enough to really have it make complete total sense in a small amount of time. One of the things I wanted to point out, as I said before, I started dabbling with it in the mid 70s, and I want you to understand that astrology is based on astronomy, which means it's based on physics and mathematics. Back before we had these neato little personal computers, what you had to do to figure out someone's chart, as John said earlier, you get the exact date of birth, the exact location, and then you have to go look up the latitude and longitude for that. And you get the exact time of day, and you plug those into literally several books of tables and logarithms, and you do the geometric analysis, and you plot it on the wheel. And it took quite a bit of time to do one of those by hand. Nowadays, you can put that into a program and push the button, and boom, it comes out. But everything that we're talking about is multiple tens of thousands of years of accumulated practice, and in some cases empirical categories of these modalities and the elements and the rulers of the signs, and it's all based on pretty much mathematics associated with highly correlative, let's say, facets or characteristics that go with that mathematics. John, what would you say about that?
Well, the math is incredible, and it's like I said in the very beginning, astrology is hard work, and even without doing the math, it's still hard work. But we have programs now that can calculate the aspects and to a precise degree, and so we don't have to do all of the math the way that we used to, and so we can kind of get more to the interpretation of a person's chart as opposed to spending so much time on doing the calculations. And if you dealt with an astrologer in the 70s, and it sounds like you were doing a lot of that work at the time, if someone asked you to do their chart, it'd probably take you hours and hours to do it, because you had to find the exact position of the planets. They had an ephemeris at the time, which has all of the placements of the planets. But then you would have to get the exact birth time and find the rising sign, and then you'd have to figure out whether or not what house was the first house, and what the rising sign was, and then you'd have to look and see if that sign was if that house was intercepted with another sign or what. And there are different house systems, and this is where it starts to get complicated, because there's the Koch system, there's the Placidus system. Most people use what they call the Placidus system of chart casting, and that's the one that you have to be careful with the intercepted houses. But or you can just use a system that just uses the houses as being fixed. For instance, if your rising sign is Aries, all 30 degrees of your first house is Aries. You can do it that way if you don't have any other way of calculating the intercepted houses. So I hope I'm answering your question. And you're reminding me of a question that we had from the chat room. As a matter of fact, let me give out the phone number. If you want to call in and ask some sort of a specific question about understanding what we're talking about, or if you want to ask John something about astrology or your sun sign or your ascendant or whatever, our number here is 888-919-2355. Or, of course, you can go to our chat room at inceptionradionetwork.com. We've got all kinds of images there posted that are sort of helpful to see what he's talking about. And let me read you this question, John. How does a person find, this is such a good question, how does the person find a reliable astrologer that uses these charts and these maps? And is there any scientific basis for astrological predictions using sky maps? Now, I'm not sure what he meant by using sky maps, unless he's talking about constellation or astronomical maps, but at least take a shot at the first half of that. How do you find a reliable astrologer that knows what they're doing if you wanted to have your chart done? Well, a lot of areas have associations where there are astrological associations. For instance, in the area I live, there's the DFW Astrological Association. Those are people that are really dedicated to the work. And those are people that get together and talk astrology, and that's their part of their life, because the best astrologers live it. They live talking about astrology. And so whenever I get the chance to talk astrology with someone, I do, and we talk about different aspects. But you can also, so just go to the internet, look for a local astrological association, or you can. There are national associations of astrologers. Colorado is a big place to where you can find a lot of astrologers. That's where the Mountain Astrologer is located. The Mountain Astrologer is a magazine, and there would be professional astrologers that are there. One of the astrologer that I use is in Seattle, Washington, and his name is Dennis Flaherty. He's with the Northwest Vedic Sciences Astrological Association, and but he does Vedic astrology, which is differently. And that brings me to the next part of the question, as far as using sky charts. The Western astrology does not use a sky chart. Vedic astrology would use a sky chart because the Vedic astrology and the placement of a Vedic astrologer's planets would be identical to an astronomer's placement of the planets, whereas Western astrology uses a different way of calculating the positions of the planets. And that was a big controversy not a few years ago because this astronomer came out and he noticed that Western astrology didn't match up to the actual placement of the planets. And he was saying, oh, astrologers are all wrong with their placements. Well, he kind of made himself look foolish because we all know that, so we know that, but the system works the way we do it, and so that's why we continue to do it. And I think the third aspect of that question was about science. If you want to know something about an event, you're not going to get that with astrology. And the reason why is because astrology is not about exact events. It's about tendencies. It's about positive energies and negative energies. And for instance, if you had an aspect, and Laurel, you can I'm sure you'll follow with this. If you have Mars conjunct Saturn, I mean, that's an ugly aspect because Mars, the sign of war, and Saturn, the sign of discipline. You can see that could be a big fight between people, or that could be a problem, and that happens once a year. And it does happen to some people with that aspect in their chart. It does happen, but other people just live just fine, no problems at all. We have freedom of choice, and that's another thing that people misunderstand about astrology, because they feel like astrologers think that something definite is going to happen. No, it's only about tendencies. It's about positive energies, negative energies, and working with that. Now, it's how you deal with those energies that gets you to either go with the flow, or if you resist that energy, then negative things can happen. But it's not about the planets controlling you. It's all about energy. So
there's two things that you've touched on just now, John, and I'm hoping we have enough time during this second hour. I mentioned earlier that we're definitely probably going to do at least another show, and maybe this is going to turn into an ongoing series every month or two. But there's two things I want to ask you. First of all, one thing that many people who just read their horoscope in the newspaper don't understand is that you have four very nuts and bolts, broad stroke characteristics in every chart. Your sun sign,
right,
which most people know because that's the month you were born, and depending on the day. Your moon, where your moon is. And I think you'd probably pretty much have to go to some sort of a horoscope to find that out, although you could also go to a calendar. I noticed that a lot of calendars now say what sign the moon is going into, so if you could find that, you wouldn't have to go to an astrological table. But then the ascendant, which we said is really, it's not complicated, but you have to do the math to calculate it unless you're going to put it in a program. And then the midheaven is the very cusp of the 10th house going in from the 9th house going into the 10th. And then the other thing, I'm going to go ahead and tell you this now in case you get on a roll with answering that question. You brought up the issue of planets moving now. So Mars moving right now, Saturn is moving through the constellations right now. What does that do to a person with a chart if Uranus or Saturn come moving around and it's like a match striking on another planet that's in your chart? So, can you think you can handle those two? Or is that too much to ask
No,
for?
no,
I mean, it's just a lot.
No, but I'd kind of want to set a little bit of a background. Let me go through those the rising sign and all those aspects first, because we're talking about constructing a chart. And as I was saying, that the chart starts at kind of like the 9 o'clock hour of a clock, and the rising sign has to deal with the time you were born in the day, and that is usually calculated by realizing that from maybe 4:30, maybe even 5 o'clock a.m. to 7 a.m. every morning, that that period of the day is ruled by the prevailing sun sign of the month, basically. So, for instance, right now we are in Capricorn. I believe we're still in, no, we're in Sag. So we're in Sag right now. And so from 5 to 7 a.m. in the morning is the rising sign is Sag. Well, the next sign from 7 to 9 a.m. is Capricorn. The next sign from 9 to 11 would be Aquarius, and so on and so forth. And so like 6 p.m. is Gemini, because why is that? Because that is exactly opposed to Sagittarius. Now, what the rising sign does is it gives you your appearance, and it also indicates how you act. The rising sign is very significant because you can be confused of a person's sun sign because of their rising sign. The rising sign is called basically the little sun because it has to do with your personality. It also sets the tone for how you deal with life. For instance, if your rising sign is Aries, then you deal with the first house issues, which is about you, like an Aries. The second house is about money and possessions. You would deal with that like a Taurus person, a Taurian person. If in the third house is about communication, you would deal with it like a Gemini, and so on and so forth. If you have, let's say, Gemini rising, then Gemini, you would be, the way you would deal with your personhood is like a Gemini. You might be a multitasker. You might be somebody who is always talking about themselves or whatever. And then you would deal with money the way a Cancerian person would, so on and so forth. Now, that's why it's about how you act, and it's like I say, it's how you are. That's how you look as well. For instance, if you have Leo rising, you may look like a lion. There may be some lioness type of attributes, and one of the best examples is Bill Clinton. President Bill Clinton has Leo rising, and if you look at him, he has the way he wears his hair. It's like a mane. Mm-hmm. Okay, and so it's very striking to see the way people look. Now, if you have a Cancer rising, a lot of times you will notice that person has a round face. You see, so it's interesting to notice how the rising sign affects people, their physical their physical appearance. You see, so. Mm-hmm. Now, the thing about the sun sign, let's just talk about the sun sign for a moment. The sun sign represents about 10% of your personality. It represents how your creativity. It represents your life force, you see. And it also can give you an indication of the type of father you had. So even though you might be a Sagittarius, if you are a Sagittarius, for instance, and your father was not a Sagittarius, he may have acted like a Sagittarian. You see. And that's interesting because you might notice in your particular chart how your dad may have acted. So if you were, like I say, if you are a Sagittarian, your father acted like a Sagittarian, and that brings you to your moon. If your moon is a Libra, then your mother may have been a person that was always trying to balance things, you see. And she might have been a negotiator. She might have been a person that tried to keep everybody emotionally balanced, because Libra likes balance. And as we were talking about, Libra is the other, the spouse, your balance, the person that balances you. And that's that kind of mother you may have. Did you have a question?
So in your, not in you personally, but in a person's chart, if the sun is your basic life force and your ascendant is your personality and how you express yourself in the world, how does that moon, the energy of the moon, translate into your behavior in your own chart? I understand you're saying that the moon represents mother, but in your own chart, what does that energy say about you if you knew what your moon sign was?
That's your emotional disposition. For instance, if you have a Leo moon, you might be a little bit into drama.
I don't know anyone like that.
if you have a mother with an Aries moon, she may have a temper. You may have a little bit of a temper, and you may fly off the handle a little bit. If you have a mother with a Cancer moon, she might be very sweet and nurturing all the time. You see, and that's the way that you present yourself. You present yourself as someone who is a hugger. You know, if you have a Cancer moon or even a Scorpio moon, you might be very, very intense with that. You see, so that's how you present yourself. Now, you brought up one about the midheaven. Okay, I know it by the Latin. The midheaven.
Sorry.
That's all right. No, the midheaven is about your career, and which is very important, about your public image, what you do for life, how people see you. If they see you as a doctor, if they see you as a psychic, if they see you as a lawyer, and so your midheaven gives you an idea of who you're supposed to be. Okay, so you have to look and see what is your midheaven cusp. So, for instance, if it's Libra, you might be good at being a lawyer or a mediator, or you might be good at being a person that who deals with weddings, different things like that. If your midheaven is Pisces, then you might be good dealing with psychic stuff. You might be good dealing with film or radio, or you might be good dealing with newsprint or photographs, stuff that may be beyond the physical. You see, so something that you might be a good magician. Those things might be good for you. If your midheaven is Capricorn, then you're a born executive. You're born tycoon, or you can be you're someone that could be that's very methodical. You need to be in a position of doing things in a methodical way, and you're very concerned about your image. If your midheaven is Virgo, then you might be a really good accountant. So that's how that works. So I hope I answered those questions for you.
Yeah, I think that is so interesting. Let me ask you your opinion on this. I've read other places that it's a good idea if you are going to read the newspaper horoscopes, or better than that, if you're going to go online and read like a month ahead on some of the better astrology sites, read your sun sign, but also read your ascendant, because they both have a lot to say about what's coming up for you, especially in terms of transits. What do you say about that?
Well, that's good, but you can also read the moon sign too, which is helpful. Those horoscopes, because they're daily, they would have to relate to where the moon is in relation to the sun sign of that of the person. Just because, and the reason why is because the moon moves daily in your chart. It moves that quickly around the sun. The cycle is 28 days. So we're getting into a whole new area of astrology, which we've gone beyond the basics now. Because now we're starting to talk about the movement of the planets, and you're starting to talk about transits, and then you can get into retrogrades and things like that as well. But it gets more interesting. But if you have that foundation and you know how it works through the planets, and it works going in that counterclockwise position, then you can get a handle on this, and you won't get frustrated with it. So that's what I like about learning astrology this way.
Well, you and I were talking earlier today, and you mentioned Saturn and the transit of Saturn. That's either coming up or it's just ending. I can't remember now which. Talk a little bit about transits and explain how it's very interesting to know what planet may be affecting certain of your own houses, or making angles that could be challenging in with different planets in your own chart. Say something about that.
Okay. Well, Saturn is for me my favorite, one of my favorites. I can't say I have an exact favorite, but Saturn really can tell you a lot about what's going on in your life, because there are so many things that relate to this planet. For instance, if you've heard of the 7-year itch, the 7-year itch relates to Saturn. If you heard of a Saturn return, that Saturn return usually happens when you're 29 and a half, and then again when you're 59. And those are related to midlife crises. If you look at Saturn as it goes through the zodiac, it will tell you the areas that it is forcing you to make change. So, for instance, if Saturn is transiting through your first house, you've got to make some personal changes. You've got to worry about your physical well-being. And that's when people may undergo appearance changes. They may change the way they wear their hair. They may go get a nose job. They may change the clothes they wear. Just different things that have to do with their physical well-being. And then you look at Saturn if it goes in the second house. Well, the second house is about money. And it's also about scarcity, because what Saturn does is Saturn sweeps clean anything that's not working correctly, and it makes you pay attention and become aware. So during a Saturn second house transit, if it's in your second house in your chart, then you may experience some scarcity of money. So there may be some big bills that come up. There may be some things that you may have put off that you can no longer put off. You've got to deal with them. And then if it goes into your third house, then you may have some problems with communicating with others. People just don't get it; they don't understand you, or you might have a problem saying things that you shouldn't say, and you might wind up being corrected, or you might even learn to write, or you may learn some other skills on communication. And then you go to Saturn in the fourth house. And as we said, the fourth house has to do with mother. and that's a time when you could lose your mother. It's a time when you may move. You may be forced to move. It's a time when there may be something that happens to your home to make you make some major adjustments with your home. And then when Saturn goes into your 5th house, you could lose your father. You could lose a child. You could lose money gambling. You could lose in relationships. Or you can maybe even gain in these things. Of course, you can't gain another father, but your natural dad is your natural dad. But if you use the energy properly, then you're going to learn from whatever Saturn has to teach you. If Saturn is in your 6th house, then you may have to look at your health. You may have to look at your daily routine, your job. You might lose a pet. There may be something there to where you may even change careers, or you may change jobs. Saturn in the 7th is when a lot of divorce happens. A lot of people decide that this is not the partner that they want to spend the rest of their life with, and they may move on. But if things are working in the marriage, there may be some adjustments that will be made, but the marriage will survive and the marriage continues on. And then you have Saturn in the 8th house. And Saturn in the 8th house is about inheritance. It's about taxes. It's about maybe getting into a lawsuit. 7th house could be a lawsuit too, but the 8th house is kind of a lawsuit that wasn't anticipated, but from someone that was a hidden concern. You may wind up owing more money in taxes than you might expect. If you had just gone through a divorce, then this is the time when you sell the house, you sell those joint possessions, and you start making a new life on your own. And then if Saturn goes into the 9th house, if it's in your 9th house, and by the way, Saturn is always in one of your houses, because it's that's just the way it is.
They all move around. All those planets and stars move through a chart.
Yes, and that's why we're just talking about Saturn, and the reason why we talk about Saturn is because it's in the H house for 2.5 years, and it causes you to have to deal with it. You have to deal with it. You can't just, like the moon is one day. We can all survive a day and wake up tomorrow and deal with another issue. But Saturn you have to deal with. And you have to make those changes, because we just can't stay in bed with the pillow over our head for 2.5 years. But Saturn in the 9th house has to deal with long trips, and you may take a trip at this particular time. It might be the first time you go to Europe, or you might be working with foreigners, or you might have a change in philosophy. Things might not be exactly how you had thought they were with the way that you used to think. So it's a part of a maturation process. And then Saturn in the 10th is about changing your public image. This is when you might get a promotion, or this is when you could get fired. So there's issues there. Saturn in the 11th is about changing friends, or just reshuffling your friendships. I guess we all do that to some degree in some cases. And then Saturn in the 12th is about looking at your life and a lot about endings, about things that are closing chapters in your life, and then you start all over again. So that's the issue with Saturn, and all of them have similar issues. And one key that, before I leave this discussion about Saturn, is that if you're old enough, like me, you can look back and look at what was going on 30 years ago. Okay, that's like 1984. What was going on in your life, and were there any issues that were relatively similar to what you're going through now? And what was the result of those things? And those are things that can help you learn and help you gain insight into your own life, and how to deal with current issues that are going on. So,
while we're talking about this, do you have a few easy to find book titles? Excuse me, I had a little coughing fit while you were talking. Easy to find book titles that, if someone wanted to actually get a better fix on what, say, the different signs actually represent, or what the houses represent. Could you recommend a couple of book titles for people to check out?
Well, I have some authors that I like. Jane McEvers, or Joan McEvers. She's, I don't know if a lot of her books are still in print, but her series was about the only way to learn astrology, and it's kind of in keeping with the methodology that I've been talking about tonight. And then another author, which is really good, is James Braha. James Braha is he's a Vedic astrologer that also knows a lot about Western astrology, and he's an excellent author. And his one of his books is How to Be a Great Astrologer, and he explains a lot about the planets and about the signs. Another book that is good, that's called maybe the Bible of the transits, is the Robert Hand book. Are you familiar with Robert Hand?
I know that name. Mm-hmm.
Okay, Robert Hand talks about the transits and what's going on in the different houses, and so that's a very, very important book if you're going to be an astrologer to look at what he has. Now, if you want a book just for fun, that's really good. Is you might look at Linda Goodman. Are you familiar with Linda Goodman's Sun Signs?
I am, and I was going to say that for my money, that is the most middle of the road. Everyone can understand it, and lots of details.
Yeah.
And it really gives you a flavor for what those signs represent.
It does.
She's got several books.
Yeah, she's got several books. She's just a delight read, and it's something that I know that the listeners would really enjoy getting a hold of. A lot of those are older books because I don't get the new ones because I've read so many of them for over the years that those are some really good authors, and you can pick up, and once you can pick up the philosophy, and once you start to think like an astrologer, then you'll be able to get a lot of this stuff on your own, and you won't need the books.
Yeah, I can't speak for all four of those authors, but I can tell you that I don't believe you can walk into a used bookstore anywhere in the world and not find a Linda Goodman book or several of them.
Yeah.
And they are not little bitty short 80-page books. They are chock full of all kinds of interesting things. She gives you examples when she talks about this sun sign or that ascendant of people whose sun signs are in the same position or their ascendants, and you really start getting a feeling for what she's talking about. Since it's going to be inexpensive, and it doesn't make any difference that it's an older book because nothing about it has changed. There's no reason to get a new one. That's a really good one, I think.
It really is, and another transit to look at for people is the Jupiter transits, because Jupiter transits are about expansion and possibly over expansion. And so if you I always look at Jupiter in the first house. If it's in your first house, be careful. You might gain some weight that year, and just go with it and know that you can lose the weight the following year. So
hopefully,
that's right. So, but just know that you are, you're going to, you'll deal with that. Now, Jupiter in the second house, about money. You can spend too much money if you're not careful. Or you could make a lot of money when it's in your second house. So that's kind of the way that it works, and you can follow Jupiter through your life, and once again look and see where you were 12 years ago, because with Jupiter, it has to do with a 12-year cycle, and so we go through a certain number of cycles in a lifetime. And so if let's say you're 60 years old, you've gone through 5 Jupiter cycles in your life, and so that's that's something that is significant because you've dealt with similar issues 5 different times, and you can look back and see how you've handled those issues in your life. So it's just a fascinating exercise, and you learn so much about yourself by knowing your own chart and knowing how you dealt with certain things in your life. So. So I just enjoy it very much.
You had said that your astrologer is a Vedic astrologer. Now, what is it that you get that's different from him than you would get from looking at a chart from this Western perspective that we've been talking about?
Different perspective, which it's always better when you are doing something that you might read it one way, and another astrologer, another person in the same field might read it another way and give you some insight that you didn't consider. And with Dennis, he has the Eastern perspective, and it just gives you a different view of kind of you being in the fishbowl. Looking at a fishbowl, you see the same things, but you get a different angle of it, and so that's what I enjoy about Dennis's work. And they have a lot of different aspects that they talk about. For instance, there's an aspect that comes to mind. It's a Saturn aspect called the Sati Sati. Have you heard of that?
I've heard that, but I didn't know that's what that meant. I've heard that phrase.
Well, the Sati Sati is an aspect of Saturn conjuncting the moon, and it is a difficult time in life. It's also associated with the dark night of the soul. Are you familiar with that term?
Yes.
Okay. And so it usually affects people in their late 40s, early 50s. Sometimes it can be longer, sometimes it can be shorter, but it's often the time when you lose your mother. And because once again, Saturn is about loss, Moon is about mother, or if you don't lose mom, there could be a woman that you would lose in your life. So there's or there may be an aspect of Saturn to your Moon that would trigger those particular events to happen. So it's very interesting to see how the planets, how they view the planets. For instance, they have planets which are friends to your chart. You have enemies of your chart, and you see how these different energies affect you. And for instance, if Jupiter is a friend of your chart, then Jupiter may bring you the positive aspects of Jupiter. If it's not a friend of your chart, then you could suffer from issues of overexpansion or taking too many risks and things like that with the energy of Jupiter. So it's interesting stuff.
You and I had talked about this a little bit during the break. I don't know if people who don't know very much about astrology realize this, but if you're calculating your own chart from your birth and the time that you were born and the location, then anything, including, say, the birth of a country like the United States, has a chart. Or I know that there's also a whole area of astrology that it's almost like they take an event in time and they chart when that event occurred and where it occurred, and they look at the chart for that event to see what the outcome of it's going to be and that sort of thing. What do you think about that?
I think it's very useful to look at that because, for instance, you mentioned the United States. The United States is a Cancer. The thing about the U.S. is that if there was any uncertainty, it was the exact time that it was created. And some people say, there's a painting as to when the U.S. was actually, when the Declaration of Independence was actually signed, and it's a painting of the sun, and they're trying to figure out if the sun was rising or if it was setting. If it was rising, then it most likely was a Cancer or Leo rising for the U.S. If it was setting, it may have been a Sagittarius or a Capricorn.
Interesting.
So I don't know if what have you found the rising sign of the U.S. to be?
I thought that I had remembered that I had read that it was Aquarius. It was a Cancer sun with Aquarius rising, but that might not be accurate.
Okay. Well, I always thought it was. I've got to look. I know there's it's out there, but I would think it's more Sagittarius, and the reason why is because it's of the nobility of the Sagittarian. So it's and the truth, justice, goodwill, all of that is Sagittarian, and then of course the nurturing is the Cancer. So if I were to assign one, I would assign it to Sagittarius because that's the lofty goals of the U.S. So it's interesting to look at cities. I know that the city of Dallas is an Aquarius city, whereas Fort Worth is a Taurus.
Very interesting.
Yeah. I think New York may be a Leo. Leo. So it's interesting stuff.
Well, do you have any information, or do you remember reading anything about horoscopes that might have been done about 9/11 when the planes actually crashed into the building?
Well, at the time there was I believe a Uranus Pluto
retrograde.
I think there was that Uranian Pluto conjunction going on. I can get my ephemeris here in just a moment, and that of course once again is just a tendency. And I'll have it here in just a moment, but see, some aspects don't come about for many years, because when you look at the aspects of Uranus, it takes 86 years to go around the zodiac. And for instance, if you were born with Uranus conjunct your sun, and 86 years later Uranus conjuncted your sun again, you could have a heart attack.
Oh my!
Because of the sudden nature and unpredictability of Uranus.
And Uranus rules lightning, right?
It's lightning strikes, and that, of course, that's Aquarius. So I'm going to look at September 11th, 2001, and September 11th, 2001, you had Uranus conjunct Pluto. Well, no, you have Uranus conjunct Neptune, and so, gosh, that's kind of an ugly thing too. Well, they used fuel. They used the imagery of the towers falling down and the sudden loss, and both of those were in Aquarius. So you had sudden loss.
One of the things I wanted to say when you were talking about Pluto, the ruler of Scorpio, earlier, is that another association with Pluto is the phoenix, that something is completely, utterly destroyed into nothing but ash, and then something comes up from it later, a new thing. So that makes that conjunction very significant.
Yeah, well, let's see. Uranus is not, let me see, September. There was a certain conjunction there that I wanted to look at. And it's, I thought it was Plutonian, but I want to be correct here because we're on the air.
Well, I tell you what, if you want to take more time to look at it, I'm pretty sure that if you have the time, I'm going to ask you to come back and join us. Maybe we'll maybe some people will actually contact you at your johncappello.com website. That's Pello, 2 P's and 2 L's, johncappello.com, or go to epicvoyagers.com and to contact us and send us some information on what you might like to hear in further depth on these. But I don't want to put you on the spot.
Oh, it's okay.
Right
That's
now.
okay. Well,
Okay.
there were just certain aspects in on September 11th that were kind of ripe for issues that were coming up, and you had Mars not that far from Pluto. And so that's a major, like, violence, a transformational violence that could occur, and that's one of the things that did happen. So it's there's a lot of things that looking at September 11th, 2001, but they were only tendencies. No one could have predicted astrologically that something so catastrophic was going to happen. It just couldn't do it. So,
and I want to be really clear about that. Astrology is not about fortune telling.
No.
Just not about that at all. I know there are some people that think, oh, they're trying to predict what's going to happen, and if they tell you what's going to happen, then that's not bad. That's demonic. But really, it's not about that. It's about choices, options. I like to think of it. You say tendencies. I think of it as probabilities, higher probabilities. And a probability may turn into something wonderful, like you tell me I have a 1 in 500,000 chance at the lottery. I'm still not going to buy a ticket because I don't ever win, so I'm not going to do it. So that probability is in effect 0 for me.
Well, it's and it's freedom of choice, because if you decided to buy a ticket, you could still buy the ticket, but you may know that you don't have the energy of luck around you. So whereas some people do, and I know that there's one guy, several people have won the lottery more than once. How do you do that? And why would you even play it once after you've won a major amount of money?
This is off the subject for just a second, but I was doing a little research last week, and there's a woman who was trained to be a remote viewer, and she has published a book of how to win the lottery every time using remote viewing basic techniques.
And
I haven't got it. I haven't looked at it, but it sounds kind of interesting, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. I mean, that'd be peering into the future. But that's precognition from my perspective. But no, it'd be interesting to see what she has to say about remote viewing, because I would say that remote viewing would be more like being able to see another country by looking remotely from the United States or something like that, or looking into another person's home, or that's what remote viewing is. And there is energy around the lottery. It's just that the energy is random. And it's hard for us to. You hope it is.
Hopefully, it's not a control game.
That's true. That's true. If it is, then that's not good.
No.
But it would be easier to see something that's not controlled than or that is controlled versus not controlled, because the randomness. You just have to be familiar with those energies to be able to pick that up. So. It's fascinating information, and I try to devote my career and my life to trying to figure that out, and I'm pretty good at it, but it still takes a lot of work and an effort to get it right. So
yeah. Well, I can't tell you how much I've enjoyed talking to you tonight, John. I just got the high sign here from our producer, Joe, that we've got 1 minute left. So I'm going to tell everybody real quickly that Aaron Judkins will be here next week. I don't know who his guest is. And John and I are talking about maybe doing something here on the show on the last Monday of 2014, but we haven't decided that yet. So keep checking epicvoyagers.com website, and that's where we post the upcoming radio shows. What do you have to say as a way of goodbye to everybody? We've got about 30 seconds. No, not even. Maybe 20 seconds, John.
Okay. Well, try to find your birth certificate and try to get your chart done. You can go to a website, astrology.com, and they'll do it for you. And then from that, you can start looking up the aspects and learn a lot about yourself. I think you'll enjoy it.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for being with us tonight. Please join us again next Monday evening for Extraordinary Phenomena Investigations Council's Epic Voyages. I'm Roger Peacock for Epic. Until next time.
You say too much to learn. You say cover up this